Hello, everybody, and welcome to Arkansas Alive. I sure appreciate you joining me every day. And let me explain to you why it's occurred to me why I sign off confessing that Jesus is Lord of Arkansas. I may have explained it, but I want to explain it to you again. That is my confession for the state of Arkansas. That's my faith being spoken out loud. Jesus is Lord of Arkansas. It has nothing to do with the conditions. It has to do with my faith in what I say. The scripture, Jesus said, you can have what you say. If we'd all say that, you'd see even a bigger change in our state. So I just thought I'd let you know that's why I say that every day. All week we've been talking about how to live life skillfully. And today I have some more good information for you, so stay tuned. Arkansas Live starts right now. If you go over to 1 Kings, you can learn a lot from this story about the Queen of Sheba when she visits Solomon. And since we're talking about how to live life skillfully, I want to run over there and look at some of the things that she teaches us out of the Word. First of all, the Queen of Sheba was the most successful businesswoman in the world in her time. Now stop and think about it. Yet she was curious of Solomon. She had heard of him. And the Bible says that Solomon was the wisest man ever. There's only one wiser than him, and that's Jesus. So let's go over to 1 Kings chapter 10, and let's look at verse 1. And when the Queen of Sheba heard of the fame of Solomon concerning the name of the Lord, she came to prove him with hard questions. She came to Jerusalem with a very great train, camels that bear spices, much gold, precious stones, and when she was come to Solomon, she communed with him of all that was in her heart. She sat at his feet and wanted to learn what Solomon knew. But notice this, and this was customary all through the scriptures, even in the New Testament where Jesus was concerned. When you went to seek out advice or wisdom from a king, you took an offering. She came with a very great train. They had bowmen for security. Same with Jesus. The wise men were looking for a king. And the wealth that they brought was not just, a cigar box wrapped in tinfoil and a bottle of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. It wasn't just a, token. It was a whole train protected by archers, bowmen, to protect it because they were going to worship a king. And when you went to see a king, you always took all the wealth that you had and threw it at their feet. That was your seed. That was your heart. You were looking for answers. And so that's what Sheba did. Now, Solomon, verse 3, 1 Kings 10:3, told her all her questions. There was not anything that he hid, which he told her not. So he told her all her questions, all the things that she wanted to know. And when the Queen of Sheba had seen all Solomon's wisdom and the house that he had built, and the meat at his table, and the sitting of his servants, and the attendance of his ministers, and their apparel. I want to be sure and get that in there because today in the visitor-friendly, seeker-friendly, progressive church, they don't think that your appearance is, worth anything. They dress down. The church has been dumbed down, and we don't think of those things as important anymore. But yet you have scripture for this. When the Queen of Sheba came to see Solomon, she was almost blown away, passed out at his wealth, his riches, and what he had built. And not only him, but she was overwhelmed by how his servants, his staff, the attendants of his ministers, and their apparel, his cupbearers, his ascent by which he went up to the house of the Lord. And it was so awesome. It says there was no more spirit in her. It took her breath away. And she said to the king, "It was a true report that I heard in my own land of thy acts and of thy wisdom. Howbeit I believed not the words until I came, and my eyes have seen it. And behold, the half was not told me of thy wisdom and prosperity. It exceeds the fame which I heard. Happy are thy men, happy are thy servants, which stand continually before you, and that hear thy wisdom. Blessed be the Lord thy God, which delights in thee, to set thee on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he thee king to do judgment and justice." And she gave the king, now this is what was included in the train of wealth that she brought. She gave the king 120 talents of gold. That's about $3.5 million in today's currency. And she gave spices, very great store, precious stones. There came no more such abundance of spices as these which the queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So you can see that although she had brought a lot of wealth to give to King Solomon, what she was really after was his wisdom and his knowledge. And she was so impressed by everything that she saw. She sought it. People don't seek those things today. They're content to listen to a dumbing down. I did a wedding for a young couple, and the girl. This was several years ago. The girl attended our church, but her fiance, he attended another church, and they wanted me to do the wedding, but they wanted to do it in their church. Now I don't do them anymore, but I used to. I would not do a wedding unless it was in our own church with our own membership. I'd been asked by notable people to let them use our church because it was beautiful, and I said, "Well, where do you go to church?" They told me. I said, "Well, you need to go to your church. Our church is not for sale to do weddings." I didn't say it that way or was ugly about it, or I just let them know I'm not here to marry somebody on Pinnacle Mountain or out in front of a beautiful gate or whatever. I'm here to minister to the needs of our flock. Anyway, so I went over to the men's church, and it was a visitor-friendly, seeker-friendly church, which means they had stripped the church building of everything that was, how would you say, religious or beautiful or whatever. And hardly anybody in that church, especially even the staff that worked there, including the pastor, they did not wear suits and ties anymore. They wore blue jeans, khakis, sweatshirts. They had dumbed it down because they had bought into the visitor-friendly, seeker-friendly. We're going to look like the world, and that'll draw people to us. It didn't work, and the people that started it repented and confessed that we just. They really confessed that they had lowered the standards of the church world, and their main goal to draw in the world outside into their church, because the church looked like the world. It didn't look like a religious edifice. And I'm not talking about religiosity, but it didn't look spiritual at all. And it was by design. And the founder of all that movement, wrote an open article years later and said, we failed to make disciples. All we did was make carnal Christians. He was honest about it. But that's what happened to that movement. But that movement infected a lot of other churches and ministries, and it brought the whole church world down a notch to where and it still hadn't recovered from it. I think it was the worst thing that ever happened to the quote church company, because it really became mediocre. And anyway, long story short, I was there doing the rehearsal. And any time I do something for God, depending on what it is, I mean, if it's a men's advance, I will wear, casual clothes and leisure clothes. When I did Andrew Womack's men's meeting up in Colorado, they wanted us to wear jeans and boots. So I did. I have no problem with that. But anything that I do for God, I like to look my best, dress my best, etc. So I'd done the rehearsal at this church, and it was a visitor-friendly, seeker-friendly church. And after the rehearsal was over, the lady that directed the marriages rehearsals and everything in that church, she came up to me and she said, Pastor Caldwell, she said, may I just compliment you? It's such a refreshing to see a minister behind the pulpit dressed in a coat and a tie. She says, we don't do that here anymore. And she said, I miss it. Well, I thanked her for her compliment. I wasn't degrading their ministry and whatever they stand for. But you can always go back and find in the scriptures about how people dressed and why they dressed that way. I was doing a ministers' conference with Keith Moore up in Tennessee a few years back, and we were teaching the ministers. And one of the ministers asked Keith this question, and Keith's on our television network, Faith Life Church in Branson, Missouri, and Sarasota, Florida. And they asked him a question, said, Keith, God doesn't care what we look like. He doesn't care what we wear. Why is that an issue? And he doesn't really care about that. And Keith, so kind and loving, answered him, and he said, he used to. God hadn't changed. We're the ones that have changed. And you stop and think, how were the priests supposed to dress when they ministered? You go back and read that, and you'll find out that they had designated clothes that they had to wear. You'll find here that in Solomon's court, the apparel of his staff, the apparel of his ministers came into play. It overwhelmed the Queen of Sheba. She was impressed by it. And now we're not talking clothesline preaching. We're not trying to impress anybody by the way we wear or what we look like or how we drive or whatever. It's much deeper than that. It's not a fleshly, carnal thing. It's a spiritual thing. And I just happened to be raised in a generation where anything you did for God, you went to church on Sunday, you washed your car, you clean, you shine your shoes, because you're giving your best, you're looking your best for God. It's a heart thing. I didn't make light of it or criticize it or whatever. I just explained why you do certain things. And here, we're talking about living life skillfully. She was so impressed that she gave him millions of dollars worth of goods, and she sat at his feet, and she came to learn about his wisdom. And she did. Now let me make note of these. I have all these things in my library. The Queen of Sheba was the most successful businesswoman in the world in her lifetime. Yet she was curious about Solomon. She wanted to know his wisdom. Even great athletes, entrepreneurs, have coaches and mentors. Now you can get off in the ditch on the other side of the road with this too. you can pay so much attention to mentor. I know years ago there was a move where everybody had to have a mentor, everybody had to have a life coach, and that went, off the charts too. In fact, I had a friend, he would be your spiritual father. That's what he called it. He said he would be your spiritual father if you pledged $1,000 a month to his ministry. He would even give you his personal cell number. And if you wanted him to be your spiritual father and your spiritual mentor, you could call him anytime, and he would. A minister friend of mine heard that, and he said, "Whoa!" He said, "I'll be your spiritual father for $500 a month." It was a money-making deal. That was years ago. I don't know how that all turned out, but I've seen that. And if you have somebody that God has put in your heart to be a spiritual father to you or a mentor to you, fine. But you don't have to pay them to do it. So how do you know if a mentor is worth pursuing or a spiritual father? Well, the spiritual father should have something to do with your life. And we're not talking about a routine every Saturday at 9 o'clock. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a lifestyle. How do you know if a mentor is worth pursuing? First, they should be able to clarify the mysteries of your life by singling out priorities. They should be able to speak into your life. They should be able to help you in operating your life and living a skillful life. They should be able to speak into your life and correct you if they see anything wrong. And nobody has the gift of straightening people out. That's not what it is. But a spiritual father should say something that would protect you or preserve you. Second, wisdom and knowledge and understanding. Wisdom is the ability to apply knowledge of what you understand. Sometimes you might have knowledge of something, but you don't have the wisdom of God of how to apply it. And it hurts people or makes people goofy or gets them off on the wrong track. Let me give you what I wrote down as 7 proofs of diligence and wisdom. And this will help you if you're taking notes, write this down. Solomon built something worthy of respect and value. He built that unto God. Remember when David wanted to build a temple for God, and God said, "No, you're a man of war, you've shed a lot of blood. Solomon, your son, will build it." And God gave Solomon wisdom because God asked Solomon, said, "Solomon, what do you want of me?" And Solomon said, "I want the wisdom of God to be able to judge your people." He acknowledged they're his people, not Solomon's people. He wasn't there to clean their pockets out. He wasn't there to get anything from them. He wanted to learn how to judge the people and to lead them. And God told Solomon, he said, "Because you have not asked fortune or fame for yourself, I will give you my wisdom, but I'll also give you everything you didn't ask for." And you can see that it's borne out in the scriptures. So Solomon built something worthy of respect and value. There's nothing wrong with having a beautiful sanctuary or a beautiful building or a complex or having something that glorifies God, as long as it glorifies God and not you. When you start building an edifice unto yourself, then you're in trouble. You've gotten off in the ditch on one side or the other. So Solomon built something worthy of respect and value. Number 2, Solomon provided for others in his household. It wasn't just for his sake, it was for the others. I remember when we first started the ministry, we were a little shopping center to begin with. But as we began to grow and begin to plan to buy land and build a building, which we did, the Lord spoke to me and said, "Now, I want you to provide insurance." Now, this was back in the 80s. "I want you to provide health insurance for your staff, and I want you to provide for them a pension plan." He said, "I know it's going to cost a lot of money," but he said, "These people are valuable to you, and they're valuable to me. And I want you to sow into their life for their value. And so we did. We started a profit sharing, not a profit sharing, we started a pension plan for the staff. And we'd put so much in it, and they'd match it or put so much in it if they wanted to. They didn't have to. And it was for them, if they left the ministry or whatever, they could take it with them. It was a personal IRA, and they could take it with them when they left. We also provided a health care plan for them, which we paid 100%, fully paid. We did that because Solomon provided for others in his household. And if you start doing that, you'll see God will bless that. Then next, Solomon's servants were organized. Pastors, the best thing you could do is to organize a staff, teach it, train it, and not overmanage it, but let people make their own decisions. They may be good, they may be bad, but at least they're having the opportunity. Solomon's servants were organized, and you need to have people that have organizational skills, use those skills to organize. My son went from working for us for many, many years, and he moved to Nashville, Tennessee, because a pastor that was in our ministry moved up there and started a church, and he wanted Ronnie to come up there and help him because he knew Ronnie had gone through every phase of development. He wanted him to start a children's church up there. So Ronnie moved up there. This was years ago. And he eventually not only organized the children's ministry, but he also became the office manager, which he had served that capacity at our church. And he called me one day, and I was asking him how it went. He said, Dad, he said, they don't have any organization. They don't believe in it or don't know what it is. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they don't even have a time to come to work. I said, what do you mean don't have time to come to work? He said, well, we had office hours, 8 to 5, 8 to 4:30, whatever it was. He said, they don't even have a time to come to work. I said, well, how do you get anything done? He said, well, people just come whenever they feel like it. I said, oh, son, you grew up in our ministry. You know that wouldn't work. He said, I know it. So he set a time to come to work and a time to go home. You got to let people be organized. And a lot of times the people that work for you have as good or not better ideas than you do. I write all this in my book, The Heart of a Pastor, and I teach it at Andrew Womack's Bible College every year, The Heart of a Pastor. You get into organizational skills. A pastor just can't preach from the pulpit every Sunday. He has to be an administrator. He has to be an office manager. He has to be all counselor and all these kind of things. And so proofs of diligence and wisdom, learning to live life skillfully. Solomon's servants were organized. Do the staff members or employees of your mentor benefit from their association? In other words, is it changing their life? Is it helping them to grow? It will if you get organized. The cost of greed and being naive or greedy. Greed is a deep longing for something that drives us to the point where we are willing to do whatever it takes to have it. More, more, more. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Greed is trying to satisfy or fulfill a spiritual goal with money. And that's a big problem. It's not money that's the problem, it's the love of it. It's greed. And greed is something that you need to watch out for. That will not help you live skillfully in your life. You'll find out that you'll be sacrificing the real true skill or wisdom by something secular or carnal. Greed is a deep longing for something that drives you to do more, point that you're willing to do whatever it takes to have it. The solutions to these things. Focus on achievement rather than money or crowds or number of people or number of partners. Focus on an achievement rather than money. Don't try to be rich. The Bible says those that desire to be rich will fall into a hurt and harm themselves. Become a giver. Always look at opportunities to give and to be a blessing to somebody, whether it's finances, a promotion, a kind word, an incentive, and stop chasing riches. Now, it says in Deuteronomy that God gave you, or gave the Israelites, gave them the power to get wealth, but it was so he could establish his covenant. It wasn't necessarily so they could establish themselves. It was so that he could establish his covenant. It takes money to preach the gospel, to travel, to do these things. And so being naive, on the other hand, has less to do with intelligence and more to do with the way you approach situations in general. Now, I'm giving you, these are ground rules for living life skillfully. Oversimplification. If you oversimplify something. Presumption. If you presume, you're going to get in a ditch. Misplaced trust. You have to observe those that work with you and work for you to see what they can do. Give them opportunities before you place a trust. And then lazy or haste. They don't take care of what they have. And so you need to always look well into the matter. So these are just some of the things that will help you live life skillfully. And if you want to go deeper into all of this, you can order my book, The Heart of the Pastor. Just go online, VTN TV, and go to products. Thank you for joining me all this week. And remember, Jesus is Lord of Arkansas and where you're watching too.
Send your questions, comments, and testimonies to Happy Caldwell at Post Office Box 26207, Little Rock, Arkansas 72221, or email happycaldwell@vtntv.com. Remember to follow VTN on Facebook at VTN Your Arkansas Christian Connection, and follow Happy Caldwell on X at Happy_Caldwell. VTN is on Roku. Search VTN in the channel store and add us to your lineup. Today's episode is available to watch on demand at VTNTV.com and click Watch. You can also watch VTN via live stream at VTNTV.com.